At my wedding, my mom stood up and said, "She's always been selfish. Just like her father." My husband interrupted, "I met him. He was the only one who warned me about you." She didn't even try to deny it. Just sat down with her wine. I always thought the drama at weddings was something that happened in movies or on Reddit posts like this one. Turns out, I was the main character in one of those stories, and I didn't even know the plot twist until the middle of the toast. My wedding was supposed to be the day I finally got away from the years of tension with my mother. Not away in the literal sense. I'm 47, I've lived on my own since I was 22, but the emotional grip, the power she still somehow held over me even when I swore I had grown past her. It never really left. My husband, Daniel, is quiet. Gentle. The kind of man who always listens first, reacts second. We met later in life. He's also divorced, and we bonded over mutual lessons learned too late. I thought, finally, I had someone who would never let me stand alone in a room full of people. That someone would pick me. But on the day that was supposed to celebrate that bond, my mother Colleen stood up and did what she does best. She turned the entire room toward herself. It started with a champagne glass, her heels clicking against the floor as she walked up to the mic, lips pressed into that polished, practiced smile she wore when she wanted to appear gracious. "She's always been selfish," she said. Just like her father. The room didn't gasp like in the movies. It just froze. I felt Daniel tense beside me, but I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look anywhere. Just the floor, my dress, my hand gripping the napkin in my lap. And then his voice, level, controlled, and louder than I'd ever heard it. "I met him," he said. "He was the only one who warned me about you." I don't even remember breathing after that. Just the sound of forks clinking as people slowly picked up their silverware, pretending not to be watching. And my mother? She sat down. Picked up her wine. Didn't say a word. No apology. No explanation. Nothing. That was 6 weeks ago. Since then, I've been replaying that moment over and over, trying to understand not just what happened but what it meant. Because Daniel had never mentioned meeting my father. My father died over 20 years ago. He and my mother had a cold, bitter marriage, and I always suspected there were things I didn't know. But I never expected this. The next day, when we were alone, I asked him what he meant. What did he mean by "I met him"? He hesitated. Sat with it. Then finally, I went to see his grave last fall. Just to know him. To feel something of him. That visit wasn't about superstition. It was Daniel's way of connecting the past to the present. He'd gone to the cemetery alone, after I told him once offhandedly that my dad loved old jazz records and used to take me to Church Street on weekends just to listen to the street musicians. "I met someone there," Daniel said. "Older guy. Said he used to know your dad. He gave me a letter." I stared at him. "A letter?" Daniel nodded. "It was from your dad. To you. He never sent it. The man said your father used to carry it around in his wallet. Said he was saving it for the right moment." I didn't cry then. I just sat there, staring at the floor, my hands in my lap, waiting for something in me to snap. It didn't. It felt like I'd already known, somehow, that there was something unfinished between me and my father. But the letter, that was new. Daniel told me he hadn't wanted to show me until after the wedding. He was afraid it would open wounds, make me second-guess things. But after what my mother said, after the silence she wrapped herself in afterward, he realized I deserved to know. The letter was short. A page and a half. My father's handwriting was neat, methodical. "Marianne, if you're reading this, it means someone thought you needed to know the truth. I never left because I didn't love you. I stayed too long because I didn't love myself enough to leave. Your mother. She needs to control the way some people need air. She doesn't mean to hurt you, but she will. Over and over, because she can't see past her own reflection. If someone ever loves you better than she did, she will see it as betrayal. Protect yourself. You deserve a life that doesn't revolve around her moods. I don't remember the last time something made my body physically shudder. We haven't spoken since the wedding. Colleen, I mean. She sent an email 2 days later with 2 lines, sorry for the awkward moment. Hope the honeymoon was nice. That was it. No acknowledgement of what she said. No curiosity about why Daniel said what he did. No mention of the letter, or my father. Just a vague nod toward a public disaster she created and dismissed as awkward. I didn't respond. I've spent the last month untangling what this means. My mother humiliated me at my wedding. My husband revealed something I hadn't known. And after years of trying to make peace with someone who doesn't believe she owes me any, I am tired. I'm so tired. I've been in therapy since I was 34. Not consistently, but enough to know what emotional manipulation looks like. Enough to know how it feels to grow up craving someone's approval more than their love. I've spent decades trying to earn something that was never mine to win. And now, I've stopped trying. Not out of rage. Not even out of bitterness. Out of peace. For the first time, I feel calm. I feel like I can finally set the script down and stop trying to edit it. I didn't block her. I didn't send a dramatic message or write her out of my life with ceremony. I just stopped picking up the phone. Colleen called twice the following week. The first time I watched her name flash on my screen, I sat still until it stopped ringing. The second time, I sent it to voicemail without hesitation. She didn't leave a message either time. Instead, she pivoted to her usual strategy, polite distance wrapped in performative normalcy. She forwarded me a recipe the week after. A dumb seasonal dessert she clipped from a Vermont food blog. No message, just a subject line, thought of you. I didn't open it. Daniel, meanwhile, watched me carefully. Not like he was walking on eggshells, but like he was waiting to see if I wanted to be held or if I needed to breathe alone. He's good at that. Reading the temperature in a room and adjusting without a word. We didn't talk about the letter much after that night. But something had changed between us. Not in a bad way. If anything, I think the truth, however painful, drew a new line of trust between us. He had carried that letter for months, unsure what to do with it, hoping he'd never need to reveal it. But when it came down to it, when she made her little power move in front of 100 people, he didn't let me stand there alone. He didn't defend her. He didn't freeze. He spoke. And that meant something. I started talking to my therapist again. Weekly. For the first time in years. I keep wondering why she did it, I told her one afternoon as we sat across from each other in that small room near the Lake Champlain waterfront. She didn't interrupt. She never does. I think I was hoping that marriage would prove something. That I was enough. That I made it despite her. She nodded slowly. And then she made it about her. Yes, I whispered. She always does, doesn't she? It's funny. When you're young, you think love is about big moments. Romance, confessions, sweeping gestures. But when you're older, you learn that love is about who sits beside you when your mother calls you selfish in front of your new family. Love is about who brings you a glass of water afterward, knowing you won't want champagne. Love is about who keeps your father's words safe until you're strong enough to hear them. The hardest part has been the silence from others. My aunt and my mother's sister called me 2 weeks after the wedding. Not to ask how I was doing. Not to ask what the heck Colleen had been thinking. She called to say, maybe your mother didn't mean it the way it sounded. I didn't answer right away. She said it was a joke. That you took it too seriously. I just sat there, listening to the hum of the fridge in our kitchen. She's embarrassed, my aunt said, more softly. I think she knows she crossed a line. Then why didn't she say that to me? A pause. She doesn't know how. I let out a slow breath. I can't keep being the one who makes it easier for her. I know, she said. She's alone now. And there it was again. The guilt. The manipulation wrapped in concern. The sense that I owed her grace because she had no one else. But whose fault is that? Not mine. A week after that call, I got a handwritten note in the mail. I recognized the cursive immediately. My mother's penmanship is practically Victorian. It said, "I suppose I should say sorry. You know I don't mean everything the way it sounds. But you've always been sensitive. Like your father. He took everything to heart too. Still, I didn't mean to ruin your day. I hope we can put this behind us. I won't bring it up again if you don't. Love, Mom." No apology. Just a performance of one. A gentle dismissal. A version of let's move on where she never has to own the wound she inflicted. I left it on the kitchen counter for 3 days. Daniel never asked what it said. He saw the envelope, nodded at it once, and went back to stirring the sauce he was making for dinner. On the 3rd day, I picked it up. Walked to the garbage. Dropped it in. I didn't even tear it first. But something was still gnawing at me. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation. But I also didn't want silence to be the end of this story. Not again. Not like every other time she hurt me and I swallowed it because she didn't mean it like that, or she's just old-fashioned, or she doesn't know how to say sorry. No. Not this time. So I did something I never thought I would. I opened my laptop. And I started writing. Not a letter. Not a blog post. A submission. Every year, the Burlington Herald runs a Mother's Day special issue. Stories. Tributes. Memories. I sent mine under my maiden name. I left out specifics. No names. No exact dates. But the bones of the story were unmistakable. It was titled When Love Comes Second, A Daughter's Journey Out of Her Mother's Shadow. I didn't write it with spite. I wrote it with clarity. I described a childhood full of rules and absence. Of punishments that weren't physical but emotional. I described a mother who couldn't love without control. A father who died trying to keep the peace. And a daughter who kept trying to earn something she finally realized she didn't need. I didn't think they'd print it. They did. Front page of the Sunday Lifestyle section, just a week before Mother's Day. I didn't even check the newspaper myself the day it was published. It was Daniel who came in from the front porch early that Sunday morning with a folded copy of the Herald in his hand and a quiet look on his face. He placed it on the counter in front of me while I stood barefoot in the kitchen, coffee in hand. "They printed it," he said. No judgment in his voice. Just a fact. I didn't answer. Just stared at the paper for a long time before flipping it open to the section he'd marked with the corner folded in. There it was. My words, in serif print. The sketch they paired it with was hauntingly appropriate, a woman standing in a doorway, her face in shadow, watching another woman walk away under an open sky. The editorial team had done a remarkable job choosing that image. The next few days were quiet. Not a word from my mother. No emails. No texts. Nothing from my aunt either. I didn't go looking for reactions either. I stayed off Facebook. I didn't check the comments online. I went about my life like the words I had written were meant to live on the page and nowhere else. But Burlington is small. You learn that quickly when you grow up here. Especially if your mother used to be a high school principal who lived for her social circles and reputation. The first whisper I heard came from my old choir director, of all people. I saw her at the co-op near North Winooski. We made awkward small talk by the bulk grain dispensers until she leaned in and said, "I read your piece." I stiffened. She nodded slowly. Brave. And then, before I could respond, she added, "You didn't exaggerate a thing." I remember what she was like. I taught with her for 4 years. She could gut someone with a single sentence. It wasn't said with cruelty, just acknowledgement. A kind of affirmation I didn't know I'd needed. I started hearing more things like that. A friend of mine who works at the local library said the staff had passed around the clipping. Not in a scandalized way, but with a quiet reverence. You put words to something a lot of us didn't know how to explain, she said. Daniel never commented on it directly, but every time someone brought it up in front of him, he placed a hand lightly on my back, or brushed his fingers over mine. Just enough to say, I'm here. By the following weekend, the silence from Colleen broke. She didn't call. That would have been too straightforward. Instead, she sent a letter. This time, it wasn't handwritten. It was typed. On ivory stationery with a header that read from the desk of Colleen M. Lawler. Same header she used when writing to school district officials or church committees. The letter was 2 pages long. The first paragraph was ice. I saw the article. I understand you've chosen to interpret your childhood in a way that is convenient for you. The second paragraph was strategy. I won't attempt to refute every mischaracterization, but suffice it to say, your depiction of me was hurtful and unnecessary. The third paragraph was classic deflection. You always had a flair for drama. Perhaps it serves you well now, but don't pretend it wasn't encouraged. And the last paragraph was control masquerading as closure. I will not be attending any future family functions where I am made to feel unwelcome or attacked. I wish you peace with your choices. I didn't show it to Daniel until the next day. He read it quietly. Then set it down and said, so, that's her version of accountability. I guess, I said. But even as I said it, something shifted in me. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel like a bad daughter. I felt finished. Not the story. Not completely. But that chapter? The one where I kept reaching for her, hoping she'd soften? That chapter had closed. What surprised me more than anything was how many other people started reaching out. Not just about the article, but about their own mothers. Their own stories. A colleague from my old HR job emailed me, I know we never talked much, but your piece hit me hard. I grew up with someone just like that. I've spent most of my life afraid of her disappointment, even though I know she's not capable of love the way I needed it. Another woman, a childhood friend I hadn't spoken to in years, messaged me on Instagram. I always envied how put together your mom was. Reading your story made me realize how much of my own was performative, too. Thank you for writing about it. And then there were the people who didn't say anything, but looked at me differently. Softer. Less performative in their own ways. It's like telling the truth once you give everyone else permission to put down their masks. I didn't expect that. I expected to feel exposed. I expected criticism. Instead, I felt community. Quiet, sometimes invisible, but there. Daniel and I started doing more small things together. Cooking. Walking the dog. Sitting on the porch and watching people pass by. Not because the article changed anything between us, but because it cemented what we already knew. We were on the same team. And yet, even in all that calm, a part of me still felt the lingering vibration of my mother's letter. The unsaid things. No regret. No apology. Just the sound of a door trying to shut without making a noise. But what she didn't realize was that I no longer needed the door open. I had built a new room. The first Mother's Day after the article came out was quiet. I didn't send flowers. I didn't call. I didn't do anything performative or polite. I stayed home with Daniel. We grilled chicken and vegetables, and sat outside with a bottle of wine and soft jazz on the speaker of one of my dad's old Miles Davis records, digitized years ago. I watched the clouds move across the lake. Watched boats in the distance and people walking their dogs along the shoreline. I thought about all the other grown women like me who were probably faking smiles at brunch, listening to their mothers complain about restaurant service or their friends' misfortunes or kids these days. And for the first time, I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel guilty either. I just felt free. 2 weeks later, I got a message from the Burlington Herald's editor. They were doing follow-up piece reader responses, reflections from contributors. Would I be open to sharing more of my story? Even anonymously? I hesitated. Not because I was afraid of exposure. I wasn't anymore. But because I didn't want to write another piece filled with pain. I'd already done that. So I asked if I could write a different kind of follow-up. Not about the damage, but the distance. And what grows there. I spent a weekend writing it. The second piece was called "The Garden You Grow After the Storm, Choosing Peace When Forgiveness Isn't Mutual." I wrote about boundaries, not the kind you yell, but the kind you build quietly, like a wall of hedges between your life and someone else's noise. I wrote about what happens when you stop explaining your pain to the person who caused it. I wrote about love that's earned, not demanded by bloodline. And I ended it with a sentence I didn't even realize I believed until I typed it: sometimes the healthiest form of revenge is living well outside their narrative. The paper published it 2 Sundays later. This time, my name was printed beneath the title. No pseudonym. No initials. Just me. That was the end of it. No further letters. No calls. Not even from my aunt. Colleen didn't respond to the second article. At least, not to me. But word reached me, eventually, in the way small-town whispers always do. She'd stepped down from her position on the board of a local education foundation. Quietly. Without announcement. Someone said she was taking time away to focus on herself. Another person said she was tired of the community politics. What I knew and what others likely suspected was that she'd finally run into the one consequence she couldn't spin: the truth, spoken plainly. Not shouted. Not weaponized. Just said. And that, I think, is what finally unraveled her power. A few weeks later, Danielle and I hosted a small dinner with friends in our backyard. Just 8 of us. Laughter, warm bread, wine, dogs under the table. At one point, someone asked, casually, "Do your parents live nearby?" Danielle glanced at me. I smiled. "My dad's passed," I said. "My mom lives a few towns over. We're not close." And that was it. No more explanation. No performance. Just the truth. Clean. Simple. Enough. I didn't feel the need to protect her anymore. Or explain to her. Or hide what she had done. We're planning a trip to Nova Scotia this fall. Just the 2 of us. I've always wanted to see the coast there, those jagged cliffs and lighthouse towns that look like something out of a novel. We'll take the scenic route. Maybe rent a cabin. Daniel suggested we pack all the jazz records and listen to them while watching the waves. He doesn't know this yet, but I've been writing again. Not for publication. Just for myself. I've been documenting little moments of quiet joys. The kind of things that once got buried under family tension and emotional cleanup duty. Now, they get to breathe. And in those pages, my story isn't about revenge or retribution. It's about release. Because in the end, she didn't break me. She gave me the final push I needed to step into a life where her voice wasn't the loudest anymore. She gave me peace. By trying to take everything. And that, more than any dramatic confrontation or shouted apology, is the truest revenge I could have asked for.